Hello, and welcome to the Astrology channel. I am Joe G. I am an astrologer, and I do other things too, but in this channel, astrology is what I do. And I'm with my good friend, Kyle Pierce. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Pierce. I do nothing but astrology 24/7.
I mean, that qualifies you to be in the show. There we go. But we are talking about the outers. This is our spin-off series to our weekly horoscopes, where we talk about the outer planets through the bounds. There's only 7 days in the week, and we make planetary day horoscopes. So the outer planets often get left out. So we decided to create another show just for them. So special, these guys. Get a whole show.
They're special.
Today we'll be talking about Neptune retrograding back into the Mars bound in Pisces. If you don't know what the bounds are, I'm sure we'll make a video about it someday. But for today, they're just a tiny little division of the zodiac that is irregular and weird, but that's also what makes it cool. With that, let's get into today. So Neptune is, of course, in Pisces. It is retrograde, like we said. It's in Mars's decadent terms, soon being received by Venus through a trine. And also, Mars, the bound ruler, is in the 5th house from Neptune, which I found very intriguing. So, we were just talking about Venus trine Mars in our weekly horoscopes last week, and it's cool to see it kind of spilling back into this other week as we're talking about Neptune, because I think it's really important, because Neptune has this way of already tapping into our dreams and desires and the things that really excite us and make us feel good about living in this world. But then Neptune sometimes can take that a little bit too far, and I think that looking at this Mars trine to Venus and how this Venus is really carrying this Mars trine towards Neptune in many ways can be, I guess, an invitation, especially because it's a Neptune retrograde, to really address some of these deeper dreams and desires that we have, especially those that are like of a martial nature. Sometimes I think the martial desires, in contrast to the Venus desires, I like to always describe it as ours is the things that we don't want to talk to people about. Like the things the things that the Mars and you want is probably like the things that you're a little bit too aggressive about wanting them. Whereas Venus is a little lighter. It's like it's nice, depending on where Venus is. But I think with Neptune being like really at the end of Pisces in this Mars bound and stuff, I think the biggest question can be just some of the sacrifices that we're willing to make for those desires and some of the things that we're willing to give up on to make something happen. In the image for this day, I have a lady sitting at a table full of desserts, and she's holding a glass of wine a little bit too obsessively. There's fog in the background, and it's a very eerie sort of moment. It really feels like a moment of obsession with this glass of wine that maybe it's not the healthiest thing to be obsessed over. And I always hate resorting to addiction as a delineation for Neptune, because it's something that I find a little bit overplayed. But if not addiction with this one, it really is just this idea of holding on to what feels good and maybe doesn't actually feel good, and you're kind of like fooling yourself into like, this actually feels great. And this kind of goes with what we were saying in the horoscope with Venus and Mars too. It's like these moments of Venus in Scorpio and Mars in Cancer, of like really sexy and super exciting moments, but does it really feel good, or is it just the idea of that thing that feels awesome? And I think that's, as Neptune retrogrades into this place in Pisces, where we'll really have to sit with some of those big questions around our dreams and aspirations.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this is actually the day after Jupiter station retrograde as well, who rules all of Pisces, which kind of doubles down a little bit on that hopefully rethinking what is worth sacrificing for, or what is worth devoting yourself to. There is something very heroic, I think, about this part of Pisces. It is a willingness to die for the cause, or to give up XYZ for the cause. But because Neptune does work, its material that it works with are those of like dreams and fantasies and nightmares. It's all the stuff that exists in the totally abstract realm of imagination. We often spend our lives trying to make those things real in some way. Some of those things that get plucked out of the imaginal realm are amazing and beautiful, and it's incredible that we bring those things into being. Some maybe we wish we had left behind. We don't always see the types of sacrifices people make to make those things happen. There could even be like an idealization about the willingness to sacrifice or to give everything to the dream itself. And like that being sort of idealized and beautified is cool, but also super dangerous, depending on the thing that you're giving it all to, especially, which I think could be an issue as we're winding down our time with Neptune and Pisces, is that maybe realizing that actually that was just an illusion, that was just a fantasy. And what do you do after that? When you found that you sacrificed it all for an illusion, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that Neptune is retrograding back from that Saturn bound in Pisces. And I like to think about that bound as just like the death of the dream, like the dream that actually didn't make it, or like just like by saying yes to the dream, something else had to die. There's always like with these sacrifices, there's always something that doesn't fall through. And I think that maybe a bit of the motivating factor to some of this obsession that can come in that spot is just that maybe you did see that some of these dreams will not stand the test of time. Maybe you did see like a glimpse of the failed dream, but now that Neptune is retrograding back, maybe there's this like, we can make it work. We just have to like patch things up here, patch things up there. We just gotta do this, do that, and it'll be fine. It's all good.
give $20,000 more, or
Yeah, totally.
sacrifice harder.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing to be careful around with this. Segue into advice segment. The thing to be really careful with is just holding on to dreams that have already died and trying to kind of like resuscitate them. I feel like it's really interesting to think about Mars in Pisces, because I think it's Firmicus that says Mars in the ninth house can make exorcists and things like that. And I always think that's a thing that can kind of come with Mars in Pisces as well. And or even just like necromancy and things like that. And I think that Neptune being in that Mars bound can have this sort of like, even with Mars being in the fifth house from Neptune, it's like, let's try to bring life into this thing. Let's try to like rebirth this, even though it has already died. And that kind of reminds me of that movie Poor Things, where they try to put the brain of this child into like the body of this woman and try to like resuscitate her and try to give her a second life. It's like a bit of a Frankenstein situation, but it really is that the whole idea of Frankenstein. Like you try to bring something back to life when it was already dead, and then like it does not go well.
Yeah.
It just will not go well. If it's dead, it's dead. Just let it be dead.
Yeah, it does sort of reek of like, but no, wait, it's not dead after all. Like actually, like there's a bit of like a refusal to give up here. I think it was so close to going into Aries, which is going to present its own, issues, but it is, I think for some people, the bubble already burst, but like, oh wait, there's still like Kool-Aid around for us to drink actually, and like trying to like get high on the fumes of a dead dream. That I think, don't do that. But as with all Neptune things, they make for way better movies than they do real life. I think we could see some real cool stories with those themes, because that is the stuff of really good stories. It's like Don Quixote, the classic guy who chased, he literally tilted windmills. Like he was an example of a person who lived in a total fantasy world, but that's like kind of what made him endearing. And it sort of, he Mr. Beaned his way through that story and sort of happened to survive, even though he was acting on total fantasies. But like that doesn't usually work out for most people. And hey, Saturn is there. I think Saturn's gonna be doing some bubble bursting. So yeah, really be careful about which dreams you chase. And
Yeah. And I think that that also doesn't have to be like this deflating thing, because I'm hearing all of the things that we're saying. I'm like, oh, this is such a downer. But I think it's really easy to see that this is like, oh shit, like the dream is not real, or oh fuck, like I cannot like make that thing happen. But I think it's less about that and more about, it's a funny keyword to use with Neptune, but it really is about the clarity of like what is the actual dream. And I think that sometimes it's easy to, especially with Neptune and Pisces, it's easy to get lost in the collective dream, like the thing that everybody is dreaming into,
Mhm.
and like forgetting what your dream was to begin with. Like there are people who dream of being accountants. It's the most unglamorous career in the world, at least for me. But maybe that person gave up on their dream of being an accountant because somebody said that they should be a TikToker instead, and there they are making TikToks about numbers, and they
Yeah,
fucking hate it. You
yeah.
know, I think that also is a way that we can see this transit as just like reclarifying some of that stuff.
I think that's a really good point. Is while Neptune in the sky moves, the collective dream changes. Neptune for you in your chart might tell you a little more about what your dreams are. To give it the positive side, I think Neptune's super important because without a little bit of that mirage or glamour over things, life kind of gets ugly and boring and dull. Like we need to storyfy things to make them fun. I would never advise anyone to stop doing that entirely, but having a perspective on like what the reality behind it is, what is the canvas and what is the paint? What's the actual substance you're working with? And being conscious of, well, this is the story part. The story part isn't objectively true, but not overly attaching to that part of the story. It's
Yeah,
just the story.
yeah,
You're
for
the
sure.
villain in somebody else's story, and maybe the hero in your own. And those are both true for the individuals, but maybe not objectively to the cosmos. Who fucking knows?
Yeah. So I guess this is it. Like, vibe of Neptune and this Mars bound is just make your dream. Like, really just be unafraid to make that choice and be unafraid to let a dream go if it's not working for you. Like,
Yeah.
you really don't have to force it to work for you. I think that that's the moral of the story.
There are new dreams. There are an infinite supply.
Truly. But with that, Neptune will be in this bound until around February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, depending on where you are. And yes, that's a lot of time. So you have a lot of time to settle into this dream, figure out if it's real or not, and then make your decisions from there on. But with that, this is all for today. I will see you guys sometime soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.